Yo, what's up guys? Mike here, coming at you from the mushroom farm. Great video for you guys today. So I got this like old exhaust blower. We got some dust and just mushroom spores on it. And I had a lot of people ask me. I've had many questions about exhaust systems and fresh air exchange and ventilation, all that good stuff for mushroom farms. I've had lots of you guys just leave questions down in the comment section. So today we're gonna focus on, and excuse my dirty hands, but it is what it is. But like I said, I've had a lot of people leave me questions down in the comment section, basically asking about exhaust systems for your mushroom farm or just achieving proper fresh air exchange. Well, today I'm going to kind of go over that, and I just want to say I've got a lot of experience doing this. I've built many mushroom grow rooms over the years. I've got nearly a decade of gourmet mushroom farming experience. This is my full-time thing too, so this is all Mike does. But if you're into mushrooms and farming and you want to see more videos like this, click that subscribe button right now if you haven't already. But anyway, let's kind of get into this one a little bit today. I want to talk to you guys just about exhaust systems on your mushroom farm and just like achieving proper fresh air exchange, because that's like what we're really after. This is a grow room right here. We're going to go in here a little bit, and I've actually got my exhaust on like this end of the room where I am. My intake is on the other end. So basically the air will come in that side with the humidity kind of worked into it, and it will go out the exhaust then. And I've had lots of people ask me to make videos on the humidifier. I've talked about it briefly a little bit. They're ultrasonic house of hydro misters, essentially, is what I'm using. But I'll make a detailed video on that. I'm controlling it with a humidistat. It's very simple, nothing like super high-tech, really, by any means that I would consider. Some people use like high-pressure misting systems. That's another way you could go about it. But like just due to the size of my grow room, I like to use these ultrasonics, and I'm a big hericium grower. I grow lots of different like lion's manes, coral tooth. Those do really well with like a nice fine particle size for like your mist. So that's kind of like why I choose to do ultrasonics. But anyway, back onto the kind of the airflow for mushrooms, just talking about the exhaust for my grow room and maybe how you should set up your own grow room, just different things to consider. So the number one thing to consider, I would say, is like, what type of mushroom are you growing, okay? And like, how are you trying to grow it? Different types of mushrooms need more fresh air exchange than others. And I want to say too, like in my experience, just growing over the years with the different size grow rooms I've had, and I've tried all different types of blowers, guys. So I've had like 4-inch exhaust blowers, 6-inch exhaust blowers. I have an 8-inch blower on this one, so this is an 8-inch blower. I've also used even up to a 12-inch, so I had this like super big exhaust fan on another room. And then I'm even sure there's like other farms that might have even massive ones. And but I've had, like I said, different size grow rooms, different size fans. You need to size your fan really to the grow room based on how much fresh air exchange you need for whatever types of mushrooms you're growing. Okay, so that's like the number one thing to consider. And I always say too, like it's also kind of wise to get a fan with like a controller. Here's what I'm talking about here, like a rheostat. So this is like kind of like a little variable resistor that you can kind of just set the fan speed. So this is nice, so you can kind of like tune it in if you want. Another thing you can do too is like a CO2 controller. And I'll just say too, I'm like totally one of these guys. I'm like a keep it simple kind of farmer. And as you guys can see, I've gotten really great results over the years just keeping it simple. And I like to keep it low tech. I've had CO2 meters in the past, and I actually just threw them in the garbage. I never thought they were too accurate. This was many years ago though, so I'm considering implementing a CO2 meter on here just for fun and just to kind of see like what results I can get here. And I'm going to talk to you guys about that a little bit. I want to talk to you guys about like how I will set one of those up if I am going to do it here in the future, and just testing it and kind of like what I'm doing now. And so what I've done over the years is I've just sized the blower accordingly, and like I said, I had like a variable resistor on there, a rheostat, some type of fan speed controller. That way I could control the exhaust speed, but I've just kind of like left it constant. And there's a lot of growers that do this. I think like Mossy Creek, I'm pretty sure, does it this way. TR Davis, I think TR Davis was a guy that used to always do it like that. I don't know if he still does it like that, but I think he used to do it like that. But a lot of us just kind of like to set things and leave them constant. I'm totally like that kind of guy. I like to keep it simple, leave it constant. But I have heard of other growers recently, and really good growers that I respect as growers, set up exhaust systems with a CO2 meter, just like setting it in for a specific parameter. So I'm wanting to consider trying that just for like energy usage and just see how things respond. I've always had such good results keeping it simple. I don't ever really like want to change things. And then plus I always kind of feel like when you add in a part, it's like another thing that could potentially fail on you. So I don't know. There's a lot of reasons why I do like to just keep things simple, but I'm considering trying like a controller and just seeing how that goes. And reason for that, it'll save you a little bit on energy. Like, it won't, especially like in the wintertime here when I'm heating up my building, I won't be sucking so much of the warmer air out of my building. I've had a lot of people ask me questions too about like temperature of my grow room, temperature of incubation. I'll make videos on that, but typically when my grow room is always a little bit cooler than what my incubation is, and it's just kind of like the nature of how it happens. The air is a little drier out here in the mountains in this natural environment that I'm in. So then when we add moisture to the air in the grow room, it kind of has like this evaporative cooling effect, so it naturally cools my air in my fruiting rooms just a little more anyway. So I will say my fruiting rooms are naturally kind of a little bit cooler than my incubation area or everywhere else in the farm, but that's just kind of like what happens. But that's kind of most of the time how mushrooms do a little bit better anyway. A lot of times you can get away with a little higher incubation temperature and a little cooler in the grow room, but we'll make specific videos on that. I don't want to get too far off topic. The main thing is when we're setting up our exhaust systems for our mushrooms, we need to make sure, like I said, the mushrooms are happy. We're just getting proper fresh air exchange. If you don't have enough air exchange, like all sorts of things can happen. Your mushrooms can kind of look like scraggly and just like not healthy. You can develop problems like bacterial blotch and just have other weird contamination issues. So it's always good to have proper airflow. And it's one of these things too, over the years, I've kind of talked about, like I said, I've never really used a meter in the past, and the ones that I did have, I just kind of threw in the trash. It's just because I've kind of got an eye for this, and like I can see when my mushrooms are responding properly or when they're not. And a lot of you guys, if you're like just starting out, you won't have any clue in the beginning about that. You might have like a slight idea about how they're supposed to look, but you won't really know until you get like many grows under your belt. And once you've got like several grows under your belt, you'll be able to see the mushrooms and actually kind of read them and know like exactly what's going on. And I just want to kind of tell you a really quick for example. So I want to tell you guys right now just a really quick like for example about how I set up a ventilation room or exhaust system and intake system on a grow room previously, and some things I encountered when I set that up, and just some things I noticed with the mushrooms right away when I set that up. So this was back when I had my mushroom retail shop in St. Louis. I had just built the grow room. I had ran like several different little intake pipes to the grow room there. I had the big exhaust. This is the place where I put in the 12-inch exhaust fan. So let me just kind of tell you guys how I set up like this room over there. Over there, it was basically a 10-foot by 15-foot room, 150 square feet. I could fit like a bunch of different racks in there. It was cool. I did some interesting things where I had several intake ports, okay? So on the 10-foot side, that was basically the side that I had like intake ports on, and I had all 6-inch ports on there, okay? I had two 6-inch blowers that were actually sucking air in from inside the building, okay, that we were in, and then I had another 6-inch blowing in true fresh air from like actual outside atmospheric air, okay? And it was not pre-treated at all. What I was doing is I was just like sucking in 2/3 of my air that was conditioned temperature-wise from my building that the grow room was in, and then I was taking 1/3 air that I was bringing in, and it was actually true fresh air. So I was kind of like blending it together essentially on one end of the grow room, and I had my humidifiers on that end of the grow room, and then basically the humidity would kind of work up into the air and it would blow over and it would exhaust out the other side. And that's where I had the 12-inch exhaust fan, okay? Now, like I said, there's a few things I want to talk about like that I encountered when I was kind of setting this grow room up. So I had all the intakes on one side, okay? They were all 6-inch intakes. Two of them, like I said, they were sucking air from inside my building there, and then one of them was a 6-inch blower sucking air from outside, okay? So I had 3 6-inch blowers over there, just kind of spaced out, and I had my humidifiers over there. That way, basically, the blowers would blow the humidity over to the exhaust side of the room, and it would all kind of get ventilated out. So that was all cool. We put blocks in there, and we were ready to test, okay? So we cut them open. I saw the pins forming, and honestly, just like within a few hours of like seeing the pins respond in there, I could tell, just because I have an eye for how mushrooms respond, I was like, the CO2 is just a little high in here. We really need to get a little more fresh air in here for these things to do their best. So what I did is I just kind of like decided, okay, well, we have several 6-inch blowers there on that intake side. I knew my exhaust was plenty adequate. I knew we just needed a little more true fresh air is what I really felt like. And even when I walked in the room, I could kind of feel it. It just didn't feel quite right. I felt like I wanted a little more fresh air in the room. So what I did, I had a 6-inch blower on that true fresh air pipe, but that pipe was really long where it was going outside. So what I did is I even put another blower in line, kind of like in the middle of that section of tubing. And I probably had close to like 100 foot of ducting or so. I can't really remember exactly. It's been a while. Basically, the point that I'm just trying to get across, though, is like I had an extra blower that I just put like in line with that pipe, just because sometimes you got to add a little more fresh air. And I didn't have a meter. I never used meters, like I said, but I always had been able to tell by eye or by feel. But I could tell within just a few hours that, hey, we needed a little fresh air and more fresh air in here, just by looking at how my mushrooms were responding. Okay, so always look at how your mushrooms are responding too, because like I said, I've had problems with these CO2 meters in the past where they're a little bit off or they just didn't read quite right. So you know these kind of things with experience though. Like I said, I may try one here just for a controller to see how it does, to see if they've improved over time, because I've heard of guys using them, and I'd maybe like to just give it a shot and see how it goes. But that's one thing that I've encountered. I was able to just kind of see the CO2 building up. I could tell, like, hey, these aren't looking quite right the way they're forming up. So like I said, I added in another blower. We got a little more fresh air in there, and then the mushrooms were able to respond properly and just kind of like grow the way they should. Now, a lot of people are wondering, well, like, how much air exchange do we truly need in a grow room? Like, what are you doing, Mike? Or what are the parameters if we are going to monitor CO2? Now, I basically tell everybody less than 1,000 parts per million for sure, okay? If I put a controller on here and I just want to see how it does, I'm probably going to set it actually at less than like 800 parts per million is where I'll probably set my blower to turn on, just because my fresh air exchange in here right now, the way I have this set up, is absolutely amazing. Like, my mushrooms, they've never actually looked this good. I feel like every time I do a grow in this new grow room, I'm like, dang, those things are looking so good. Like, I'm always so happy about how they're turning out with fresh air and all that. And the air quality here where I'm at in the mountains, it's really good too. So I don't know if it's like something to do with the air quality. It probably is, because I do know my air quality here is just better than I've ever experienced in my life too. So I do think the air is slightly better here. But I have wonderful fresh air exchange. I will say there's like a couple like spots in my door where I don't have a seal and stuff is leaking, letting more fresh air into my building. But I think it helps the mushrooms, okay? So I don't really want to worry about like sealing different little things like that up. But like, I have really great fresh air exchange right now. So it's kind of like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know what I mean? Like I said, I might tweak it a little bit just to see if we can get it on a controller, and that's really just to kind of help with energy usage, just to see if we can make the farm a little more efficient. And I will probably add like solar in the future. That's like a major goal that I would have in the future, is just to get my farm running on solar power, and that way it's just like more basically self-sustainable for myself. And I think it would just be cool to run the whole farm on solar. But that's one thing I may do in the future, just to like cut back even more energy usage and things like that. But little things like controllers can help with that, because we're not wasting our humidity then, kind of blowing all our humidity out. The weird thing is, no matter what, you're always just like achieving this balance point of like, you're adding in air, okay? So we have to have this amount of air exchange no matter what. We have to get amount of moisture in these rooms no matter what. And so we're always just like running this like fine line of this like weird funky balance. And especially like here where I am in the mountains, the natural air, there's not much humidity, okay? So like, especially when it's cold, okay, so like it can be cold, we can have this like dry air, and then you have to like try to heat it up so that like dries out the air more, but then you have to add moisture in it to grow the mushrooms. And the interesting thing is that when you add the moisture back in there, then it has like the evaporative cooling effect. So you have this weird balance that you just like have to try to maintain. And that's why there is like such an art to this. And you almost like can't always give a clear-cut definitive answer. So we're going to go in here. Like I said, I've been rambling quite a bit, and but there's a lot of good information that I feel like I can share, and just like things we can go over here. We're going to go in here though. I just want to show you like the blowers and kind of how I have things set up. But first, let's talk about the exhaust. So this thing, it's running right now, super loud. Here we go. And I made like a little box around it. And I want to say too, these exhaust fans, these are totally parts, like they're throwaway parts, right? So I built this like wild box around it, but when I have to replace it, I'm gonna have to like take that box off it and whatever. But it is what it is. I like how it looks. It keeps it clean. And it's also like kind of how my building is built. I almost had to put it in there because I live upstairs, okay? So like my living quarters is upstairs. My lab and my kitchen kind of like is in the front. I have the incubation area over here. Right here behind this back wall, okay, is actually my walk-in cooler, okay? And the exhaust, just so you guys know, like I was saying earlier, this exhaust fan, this is an 8-inch exhaust fan, okay? So what I did basically is I just plumbed the exhaust straight out the back of the building, and I actually used 8-inch PVC. If I can find some pictures real quick, I'll kind of like put some up But just to let you guys know, I've got 8-inch PVC, and it's about maybe a 12-foot section or so, something like that, 10 to 12 foot. And I've just got it running straight out the back of my building. And I haven't actually put the tin on the back of my building yet. I just put the pipes going out there. I have like some, what do you call it, that Tyvek. So we'll go out back and I'll kind of show you like what the back of this building looks like. I'm going to put some tin on it and get everything kind of finished off this year. But at least you guys can see kind of like the rough construction of kind of like how the back of the farm does look. You can see the exhaust ports. I have one on each side of the building, so I'll show you guys that real quick, and we'll go out there. So anyway, let's go out back and just kind of show you guys what it looks like coming out the back, but it's a straight shot all the way back. Okay guys, so we're outside the back now. This is actually my AC unit for my walk-in cooler, and right there, boom, you can see that is my exhaust port for the grow room. Now, like I said, it's just a 8-inch pipe that comes straight out the back, and I don't know, okay, maybe over time the spores may present an issue with my AC unit or something messing up. Who knows, you know what I mean? But right now, this thing's been running like a beast. I have no issues with it. So we'll see what time does. I could always like build some type of cover or thing over that. Like I said, I'm going to finish up the outside of my building this year and get some tin on this and get it all finished off. But everything's been working great so far. That's one of my exhausts. Let's go over here. You can see I got another one. So that's my other one right there for my other grow room, because basically I have 2 grow rooms over here. And oh, I want to say too, just out here when I was talking about spores, I had a lot of people asking me about like wearing an N95 mask, or like, do I wear a mask when I'm in my grow room just dealing with mushroom spores? And yeah, you should, okay? And a lot of times, like when you guys see me shooting a video, I'm just doing it real quick, okay? And just like to get the audio across, I'm not wearing a mask. But if I'm spending a lot of time in there, I am wearing a mask. I do recommend you wear one too, just because I have definitely gotten myself sick and just kind of like messed up from the spores, because they can cause some damage. And that's why I was talking about I may need to build a protective thing on that. Who knows though, because the spores inside, they do trash the blowers, like the exhaust blowers. Absolutely trash them, and it is, like I said, a throwaway part, and I'm gonna have to get in there and replace that one eventually. But it's getting a little windy out here right now. I just wanted to come out back and show you guys what it is like outside the back here. Let's go back inside right now, though, just so the audio is a little bit better, and we'll talk about the inside a little bit more. So I wanted to come inside just to go ahead and finish this video off real quick, just because it was a little windy out there, and basically I didn't want the audio getting messed up with the wind and stuff. So just to talk about the ventilation a little bit more, like I said, I got an 8-inch one in here. And my intake, I basically just have these. I have a 6-inch blower on the other side of this wall, and it blows into my humidification tote right here. And the tote is a mess. I need to clean it up, but here's the tote. There's, like I said, there's no mushrooms in here. One thing I wanted to add real quick, I was like, I know somebody's going to see this and somebody's going to ask questions like, what is that other hole for? And I'm just going to say that is just there for now. Okay, I did have another intake pipe. I did have like another intake pipe I had ran in there. I was just doing some extra stuff. I'm always experimenting, okay? But I'm actually going to cover that hole back up, and we don't need any more ventilation in this room. I was doing different things with, like, I have a geothermal system that I put in outside, and I was thinking about piping some of that air in here. But I actually don't need it here in Colorado, just because, like I was saying, I have dry air here, and I have like an evaporative cooling effect as soon as I add moisture to the air. So I'm just going to cap that hole off. But I was experimenting around with different like things for airflow, but I only am using one 6-inch blower blowing in that duct that I just showed you, and that other little hole there, I'm capping that off, and it's going to be sealed for the rest of the growing in here. But it basically blows in that tote, blows the humidity up into the air, and then it gets kind of moved over to where the exhaust is, and it kind of just vents out the back. And I have, like I said, super good results in here. I don't really, this is like almost as minimalistic as you can do. There's no temperature controller or anything like that. Basically what I do is I have the blowers on pretty much all the time, and they're always moving a little bit of air. I have the humidifier, where the humidifier is turned on, like I said, from the humidistat. I'll make more videos on that. But blowers are always on, so when the humidifier turns on, then it starts just blowing the mist in the air, and then all that mist travels across and it just gets like exhausted out. You know, and I just have like this constant air exchange going on through my room, and that's kind of like my style. Like I said, Mossy Creek does it this way. Like I said, I think TR Davis does it this way. There's a lot of other girls. I think even maybe Myers Mushrooms does it this way. But some guys are moving on to different controllers now and using CO2 controllers. I'm planning on doing that other grow room over there. I might do like full maitake in that other grow room and make it like a dedicated maitake room. We'll just kind of see how the business is here this year and like what the demand is for some of these different types of mushrooms. But I know in this room right here, I'm going to continue to do like a lot of oyster mushrooms, hericiums, my king trumpets, things like that. But for all of those mushrooms, they kind of all grow within the same parameters, so they do really well together. And like just this style where I have constant exchange works really good for those kind of mushrooms because they need a whole lot of fresh airflow, and you get like such awesome structures when they get a lot of good airflow. Like when you look at like my oyster mushrooms and you see like those massive caps, and especially the one that I can really tell the most with right now is my Hericium coralloides. Just like the way the Hericium coralloides has been looking in this grow room is phenomenal. Seeing like that crazy like blasted out like star like coral like pattern, you can tell it's just like spot on. The fresh air exchange is perfect in here. It really cannot get any better. Okay, the thing you have to watch is if you have too much, you can potentially dry out your grow room and stuff like that. Drying out stuff and things like energy usage. Like I said, me personally, I don't have any problems with stuff drying out. It's just if I do want to use a controller, it's just like to dial back energy usage and just make things even more efficient. Now, me talking about doing maitake or hen of the woods in my other grow room, that is one thing they don't like really as much air exchange. So a controller on that room might be really kind of cool because that way you kind of like just get the humidity to kind of like flow in there, you know, just a little bit of fog and kind of fog them just a little bit, give them just the air exchange they need, but not like too much, because maitake actually even like it a little more humid too. Okay, I haven't done a whole lot on a large scale, so we'll see. We'll really put it to the test and kind of get them nice and dialed in. But most of the main maitake growers that I've talked to, in the fruiting room, they like humidity from like 90 to up to 93, close to 94%. So really high humidity. They don't like a lot of air exchange, and they only have to spend like a week in the grow room for them to like frond out. Recently on the farm here, I have grown some maitake, and I put them in this grow room, and they honestly didn't like it too much being in this grow room. I will say, I got them to like frond out a little bit, but they were definitely like the maitake like brain blobs. I ate them with a steak. They were like super good. It was really good. It was like the first maitake I had grown here on the farm, and was really happy about that. But I really would like to grow some like really nice big hens and kind of let them frond out, just because they look pretty no matter what. It's a great edible mushroom, but that's why sometimes it's good to have a dedicated room for stuff like that. And that is one of the reasons why I wanted to build 2 grow rooms on this farm. In the beginning, I never had that many grow rooms. Okay, I'd have like kind of one larger room or something like that, but here, like I said, I have 2 of them. So you can like set things up differently for different mushrooms, because like I said in the beginning of the video, some of them need more air exchange than others, and maitake is kind of like a great example. And even things like kings, I'll just say if you're growing kings for more of like the stem and you don't want to like the blasted out cap, and even certain mushrooms like enokis, and you know, just some different ones that you might want a longer stem and just some of the CO2 response, you can kind of play with it. That's why sometimes it's kind of cool maybe to have dedicated rooms for different mushrooms. And that may be something we see in the future just as farmers. We might start seeing as technology evolves and like more people get kind of like specified into like certain types of mushrooms that we're growing, things might get really more specific even, I think, as far as grow rooms go in the future. And there may be farms that, you know, like just grow enoki, or they just might grow maitake or reishi or oyster mushrooms, you know what I mean? And there's going to be certain specific parameters, because even though like as clear cut like as we all wish we could make it, we wish we could all probably make a grow room where we could put any mushroom block in there, but like anything else, you know what I mean, certain mushrooms are going to respond better in certain environments, you know, so that's why it is nice to kind of like have specifics for certain ones. But at the same time, I like to kind of keep it simple for you guys. So anyway, there's a lot of stuff going on there in this video. Hopefully I answered any of you guys' questions that we had about ventilation. You know, if you guys have any questions for me about anything I talked about in this video, put it down below in the comment section. I'll answer all your questions. And also, if you guys like want any liquid cultures or something like that, like I said, head over to my website. I've got that link down in the description box below. I've had a lot of people also ask me about consultations. I have a consultation page on the website too. And I will say, I'm not the cheapest guy out there for sure, but you have to realize, like, when I go to do a consultation, I put so much effort into that. Like, you are number one. You're the number one thing. Like, on my plate, okay? Even like on a phone call, I drop everything, okay? And you are the number one thing that I'm considering right then and there. And at the farm, I'm a one-man show, okay? So, like, I built the whole thing here myself. I'm running everything myself. So when I take time away from here to do something else, it's costly for me, you know what I mean? Because I have to put everything else I've got going on here on hold, okay? So everything has to go on hold then so I can, like, help serve someone else. So that's the reasoning, and my experience, so that's the reasoning for my pricing, okay? But I will say, if anybody wants a consultation, I will absolutely take really good care of you guys. So check it out. I've had a lot of people ask me about it. I've helped some people out in the past, and I've gotten their farm on the right track. But if it's something you want, like I said, head over to my website, send me an email, and we can get you going. But yeah, anyway, just wanted to kind of tell you guys about that. Talk to you guys kind of about the exhaust system. I'll have more videos, like I said, on humidifier. If you guys have video suggestions for me, drop it down below in the comments section. Tell me what kind of videos you want. Hopefully you guys all found this video helpful and informative. If you did, please drop this video a like. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. But that's all I got for you on this one, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.